little late because I finished my slides late, but I think I will also be on a very fly because I know a lot of us will be breaking fast towards the end of my presentation. So I'll try to be very quick with this. It's a philosophical discussion, as rightly said, but it's more than just philosophy. And so the beginning of the discussion, I try to introduce to my audience the idea of worldview. And the fact of the matter is that each and every of these topics that we've mentioned here can take 3 to 6 hours to break down properly. You understand? So the challenge of somebody like me who is a rookie, number one, not any expert, just somebody who's just passionate about being a student of social science, is to simplify it in terms that can make sense more. So I think the biggest benefit, as rightly said, is the way it's going to apply to our communities, respectively. Today, we're covered with the ideas of liberalism and secularism, but we don't know. We also live in states or countries that are products of these ideologies that give birth to other states, by virtue of us being post-colonial countries or living in the global universe. So we'll start with a quick introduction, the overview, and then discuss worldview. And then we'll discuss the history of where these ideologies come from, which is in the West. And then we'll now jump into liberalism and secularism. I want to hope that we can do this very, very quickly. Of very pertinent importance is that the viewers leave with some idea of the impact of isms, specifically liberalism and secularism, in the immediate community. There are other isms that have been resulted from these ideologies also, such as feminism, postmodernism, scientism, and other things. But hopefully we give you a framework such that if there is even a part 2 of the discussion that goes deep, then you have an idea of how we are not missing out of it. My approach to this conversation honestly comes from a passion of history first, before doing a neat comparison and contrast, because it may sound way too academic, but it's good that we start asking ourselves questions, because many of us grow up in a universe whereby we don't ask questions, or we're trained not to ask questions, unfortunately, except if it's going to meet our personal pockets immediately in one way or the other. So we need to train our sense of curiosity moving forward. Of course, I will end with just my own tips from me from a very personal level that I've just seen as somebody who has grown within these societies, and then we'll move on, inshallah. Okay, so first and foremost, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can you see my Ustaz, can you see my slide just in case?
Yeah, it's loading. We can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the introduction. Today we live in a world as a global village, but what exactly is a global village? There is an idea that everything is just neutral, and we're just going to move on because it's neutral in one way or the other. But is it really, really neutral? You understand? Is it that the moment we have problems, we're going to be responded to immediately? Why does it take COVID-19 a couple of seconds to produce a vaccine, but HIV is not really a savvy one to produce vaccine like that in that aspect? Why do we have certain countries having a level of peace while some countries having a level of war in that aspect? A level of war that is doesn't seem to be ending. Why are we seeing that some certain people or some certain civilizations seem to have it all, get certain things right, but other people are not getting it right? And most importantly for us Muslims, are we happy with the predicament that we are in? And why is there a reason why our predicament is like this today? So today we see trends and cultures and assumptions that are happening in different places when people ask, okay, why is Islam not compatible with the modern worldview? You understand? Why is Islam not flourishing in certain places? Is it because Islam was created to be backwards behind certain level of societies? And we're seeing it to a level whereby our own Muslims are now copying other civilizations. I shouldn't say other civilizations, because inherently cultures are supposed to sometimes exchange each other, but at what cost do these cultures change without any boundaries, without any precaution? When we have social media today, the way social media is being used today, is it within the spirit of our own Muslim taste? Is the way we have TikTok, are they shaped by certain assumptions, or are they certain ideas Or are we just using them and just paying and just swiping and then moving on from one generation to another? And most importantly, do these ideas have a repercussion, or do these ideas have an effect in our own lives and our own children? And can we actually worship God in a better version than ourselves? Do we see any reason in which the prophetic lifestyle that we had back then is more inferior than our own lifestyles today? And if we say no, then why are we having that obstacle? And how do we take ourselves to those levels? Terminologies happen. You hear the idea of freedom, 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 human rights. You understand? Human rights is not any older than the less than 100 years old. Specifically, one can argue that the Charter of Human Rights was developed in 1945 after World War II. But today, everybody quotes human rights. Every Muslim is trying to justify their Islam within the framework of human rights, you understand? So having to understand where these ideas come from is very, very important to us, beyond just having to go to school, come out, and just passing exams and just living in societies whereby we're just working, we're earning, and we're not seeing the values, especially in our children, and we're complaining that our children are being lost to another worldview. And this is where the idea of worldview comes in. You understand? What is a worldview? You understand? I see worldview in the simple way as an agenda. You understand? A grounding and an orientation. And in simple time, just think about it. And we're speaking to maybe a largely Yoruba audience, for example. Let me just give an estimate. When you grow up in Lagos, you understand, and you start speaking in an environment, and then compare it to living outside of Lagos, for example, you understand, where the fabric is has less cosmopolitan kind of environment. You see a difference in the way language is being had, or language is being developed by a child, for example. You find out in a place like Lagos, which is closer to New York and closer to London, has more of a child likely going to pick up other languages that will end up contaminating the level of Yoruba, unless they are growing up in a very, very small box compared to somebody that lives in other areas of let's just say the Southwest, for example, in that aspect. And it happens every other civilization. Even Hausa too can experience. Somebody who is learning Hausa in Abuja who can be different from somebody, or in not just even, let's say, in the capital, but also comparing urban settlements with rural settlements. You see a difference in the way the language is developed. And this is something that was taught to us by one of our teachers, Carl Sharif. By the way, through each slide, I'm going to be giving credit to every single person that has informed this lecture. None of this, most of the contents I produced actually were certain things that I had to just take because they were very, very well developed by my teachers and the institutes that shared this knowledge. So going back to the point of language, which is a very, very powerful point by Professor Carl Sharif al-Tubri, he makes that point that when you have a grounding on something and you've mastered it, you're not going to have that kind of contamination that you have compared to when you're developed in a society whereby there's a hybrid, there's a convergence of different cultures that are shaping your own culture. So it now becomes integral that you're trying to maintain that language rather than just speaking Pidgin and speaking Yoruba at the same time, or speaking Pidgin English and normal English, and you're not able to regulate the way you're going to articulate yourself. This is how worldview is in of itself. The idea of religion as a worldview is very, very important. And in fact, the term religion is rooted in the European history, which we're going to talk about later. When you have a worldview, when you say certain things are a worldview, it's rooted in who you are today, what is your purpose of life, and how you attain those ultimate level of happiness. This is how Europeans conceived it. But we don't look at it from a happiness perspective. We look at it from more than just that as Muslims in general. And it's actually about how you're going to be able to prosper in the afterlife. And this is where I'll move to the next stage. Sorry, I went way too fast. So, see. Oops, I'm going way too fast. Let me just give me a moment. Oops, sorry for the technical difficulties. Okay. This is where Islam comes in as an ultimate worldview. So I'm feeding this into you from the foundational point of view. But before going down there, let me just make sure I've covered everything. So yes, this is where I'm introducing Islam from a perspective of a worldview, starting first from what has been revealed to us in the Quran. What are we first? We've been honored as sons of Adam. We've been provided the material capacity to do certain things and to think around benefiting from what is good, and we've been given certain privileges. But for what reasons are these reasons for? You understand? In the next slide, we'll see some of these reasons, I believe. But also, we have been given a manual as honored human beings to walk on earth. And when Adam was removed from heaven, the Quran says, فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّ مِنِّي هُدًى فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Sorry. وَمَنْ تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. Then when guidance comes to you from me, whoever follows it, there will be no fear for them, nor will they grieve. Somewhere in Surah Al-Baqarah, we have been given guidance, but how do we just go pursuing solo paths? Very likely not. So God puts us in a community and brings certain qualities that he wants us to aspire for. So he calls us al-ummatun wasata, which means the median community. So we can be a witness over other communities in general. And then we'll delve into some of these concepts later, basically more. But this is the role of the messenger. The messenger came to bring us, package us for a particular purpose, and we're on that journey, but we're within an environment. Within that environment, we have a purpose. So we still see that we're on that Sirat al-Mustaqim, that idea of the Sirat al-Mustaqim, and that straight path, and that idea is what is supposed to guide us there. If we now start allowing other paths to feed in, then we may have to start negotiating with those other paths. And at what cost does that come? Also, it's not just about just looking forward without engaging with your society also. You understand? Without engaging with the tools of your society also. And then Surah Al-Qasas, if I'm not mistaken, says, "Obtaghi fima ataka Allah dar al-akhirah wa la tansa nasibaka min ad-dunya," but seek through that which Allah has given you, the home of the hereafter, and do not forget your share on the world. And it says also, and do good as Allah has done good to you, and do not desire corruption in the land. So imagine we're not just supposed to just be journey people, but people that are contributing into the ecosystems of the universe in which we exist in, one way or the other. Within this reality, when I'm now summarizing all what I've said, so I'm giving you a framework of looking at certain things. How we're supposed to engage with our children is very, very important. You understand? Firstly, if you're born in America, first and foremost, you are, my teacher, Dr. Sherman Jackson, says that you are a child of the Enlightenment. That's number one. And being a child of the Enlightenment means that there are certain levels that you can imagine that the cloud and the oxygen that you're breathing has been suffocated with certain level of ideas, ingredients that you're breathing. So the idea of your freedom comes because certain things have been built to produce that society. And that is what you're flourishing in. All these categorizations of worldviews that you now have can be seen from the perspective of ontology, from which is these are terms that are used philosophically. Ignore the terms, but focus on the other areas of what they mean. So what exists, for example? You have to ask these kind of questions if you're in a society that tells you that you should focus on yourself first before you focus on your outside self. So you now have to ask what exists. When you ask what exists, then you can now confirm that one way or the other, God exists, especially if you are a servant within one of the Abrahamic faiths. Now, to verify what exists, what is God here for us from? Remember, God is supposed to give us guidance, like a manual for the world. So the next question is, what is knowledge? How do we acquire the knowledge? You understand? And then you now look at yourself as a focal point on earth that has been given that custodianship of knowledge, basically. You understand? You're not just somebody, for us Muslims, you're not just somebody that is just moving out from water to land. You're somebody that is a product of Adam. So you're not just an idea of pure evolution, depending on how you understand the discussions that are happening about evolution when you compare the worldviews that are happening. So you have to ask, what are you as a person, as a man? Your manhood is definitely, or your humanity is definitely tied to a purpose. which is the next point. Is there a purpose? And then when you now understand these terms, you're now thinking about, okay, what is right or what is wrong? Ethics. And that ethics now shapes the idea of the ummah or the community that you are building. Generally, it shapes the politics, it shapes the law, it shapes the constitution. You understand? And it shapes even your general idea of what is beauty. Let me give you an example of what beauty is. The kind of kaftans or the laces that you wear for Eid is a signification of the kind of beauty that you're able to produce by virtue of the fact that you recognize God loves beauty. He wants beauty. He wants you to appear in your best form. The kind of masajids you build, the kind of domes that you build, shapes those kind of things. You're not wearing Tata jeans to go to Eid prayer. You're not going out naked. You're not allowing refuse dump just anywhere or just allowing people to just smoke around the neighborhood. That informs what is a standard. You're not desensitized by falsehood. This is what informs beauty in of itself when you're thinking around from that perspective. My next slide will now look at how worldviews compete. So just to give you an example, this can take a whole, studying this, we took like 6, 7, 8 sessions separately to break certain things. All I'm just trying to focus on is you have an Islamic worldview. We're separating worldviews into two. And when I was growing up as a student, I understood worldviews as playground worldview versus other worldviews, maybe money-making worldviews. And then you have this Islamic worldview. Here, let's just simplify it. You have a modern worldview that is piloting the universe right now. What is your worldview in respect to that? When you look at the modern worldview in summary, you're looking at God being the center of everything. We're here for worship, period. So what is our framework in general? You understand? And then look at the modern worldview. What has it put at the center of the universe? We're still asking that question up till now. Now, if you have that modern worldview, then you have to believe in the faiths, the different pillars of your faith. You have to believe in the unseen. You have to believe in Judgment Day. This answers some of the questions of what is happiness to some people, or what is the ultimate success for some people in general. When you compare it to the modern worldview of somebody else, he's saying that the supernatural world may or may not exist. All that exists is just what you can feel around yourself, basically. You understand? And then, is there an accountability process? You understand? Very likely not. Very, very likely not in that aspect. So we're being consumed by time, maybe, according to them, one way or the other. But the general idea is that you're just down here, you're born in the world, and you're just spending time. You're just going to corporate America, clocking in, clocking out,